Hello, I'm Tony Svejcar with the Agricultural Research Service and the Eastern Oregon Ag Research Center, and I'm here to present an Ag Minute. This week I want to spend some time talking about fire frequency in sagebrush and pine plant communities in southeastern Oregon. Fire has been a common occurrence recently and historically in both sagebrush and pine plant communities. After this summer, there are plenty of interest in the topic and many questions about how these fires compare to historical patterns. We have better information on fire frequencies in plant communities that have fire-resistant, long-lived woody plants such as Ponderosa pine. We can use tree rings with a charcoal marker or a fire ring to identify years with fires. For example, if we took a Ponderosa pine ring core and counted 200 rings, and 10 of those rings were fire rings, we'd have an average fire frequency of once every 20 years. Now, what if we were interested in fire frequency in a low sage flat? What would we use as a marker? There might be a mature juniper tree that escaped fire and could be useful, but often precise estimates of fire frequency over long periods are difficult. Determining these numbers helps us estimate the past, current, and potential future role of fire in these plant communities. There are a number of different types of sagebrush, and they tend to have different fire frequencies. I'll cover just a few types today. As a rule, the more productive the site, the more frequent the historical fire cycle. So our mountain big sagebrush sites had fire frequencies of something like every 15 to 25 years. The lower elevation Wyoming sagebrush type, maybe 30 to 60 years, and low sagebrush, probably 80 plus years. These are not hard and fast numbers, but they provide a general idea of the ranges. Mountain big sagebrush lives in fairly productive sites, generally above 5,000 feet. These estimates assume cheatgrass and medusa head are not a major part of the plant community. If either of these annual grasses have invaded a site, all bets are off on the average fire frequency. Annual grasses such as cheatgrass and medusa head can have a huge impact on fire cycles in sagebrush plant communities, and the impact is more frequent fires. For example, there are sites in southern Idaho and southeastern Oregon that historically burned every 40 to 50 years, and after cheatgrass invasion now burn every 4 to 8 years. The timing is also different, with much earlier fires because cheatgrass becomes flammable earlier in the summer than did the native grasses. The increased fire frequency is a result of the continuity of fuel with annual grasses. If you've walked in a lower elevation sagebrush bunchgrass plant community, you probably noticed a fair distance between the bunch grasses. These grasses provide the fine fuels that carry a fire. Now think about a cheatgrass or a medusa head site, like those along the roadsides on the way to Boise. There's a mat of dry grass, and it doesn't take much of a wind to carry a fire. It only takes a few fires at the wrong time of year to cause these lower elevation sites to convert to cheatgrass. I'm Tony Svejcar. Thanks for listening, and join me again tomorrow for another Eastern Oregon Ag Minute. Today I'm going to talk about fire cycles in the Ponderosa pine zone. Keep in mind that these are lower elevation pine forests, and they are often bordered by sagebrush and juniper. We have pretty good information on fire frequencies in this community type because big Ponderosa pines have thick, fire-resistant bark and tend to carry obvious fire scars, so their tree rings provide a nice fire history. Many of these sites burned at 8 to 12-year intervals. That may seem pretty frequent, but these were relatively low-intensity underburns that removed the pine needles, grasses, forbs, and small shrubs. The current thinking is that we had small but frequent understory burns, and on maybe a 200 to 300-year cycle there are also some very large, more severe fires. Presumably, the small fires kept the fuel from accumulating, but on occasion there would be the right combination of conditions to allow for big fires. This week I provided some information on fire cycles in sagebrush and Ponderosa pine plant communities. As a general rule, the more productive the native community, the more frequent the natural fire cycle. Starting in the forest, we might have 8 to 10-year fire frequencies. Higher elevation mountain big sagebrush may be 15 to 25 years. The lower elevation Wyoming big sagebrush may be 30 to 60 years or more on the dry end, and low sagebrush may be 80 plus years, but difficult to estimate really. Invasive annual grasses such as cheatgrass and medusa head can shorten the time between fires dramatically. Historically, there were also at least two major kinds of fires in the forest: the frequent low-intensity underburns and the infrequent major fires every 200 to 300 years. By suppressing the low-intensity burns over the past century or so, we have allowed for a major accumulation of fuel in these forests. Many of the forested areas that burned this summer will still have large fuel loads once the trees fall to the ground and the understory starts growing. I think many people assume that a major forest fire, such as what we had this summer, will reduce the fuel loads to some historical level, but that's not necessarily the case. I'm Tony Svejcar. Thanks for listening.